welcome a special leader in today's BW Dialogue. We have Ms. RM Vishakha, who's the MD and CEO of First Life Insurance. Welcome, Ms. Vishakha. How have been the last 200 days for you, both personally and professionally?
Good morning, Dr. Batra, and good morning to everybody on the audience. I think I'm going to start off, first of all, with an apology to keep you waiting. And trust me, this is one of those typical places where, Murphy's laws apply. One meeting where you say you've got to be on time because it's not a recording, and then things work against you and things just go out of control. So if you ask me how have I been this past 6 months, Dr. Batra, I think my first answer is it depends on when you ask. So if you ask me right now, it would be, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed to be late. I hate this COVID. This would never have happened had I been in office. It's all of those feelings of and not very happy feelings. You asked me at a point of time when things are going well, when we hear good stuff about everybody being happy, then you would sales numbers, for instance, for this month have actually been reasonably good. At that point of time, you will say, good, we've managed to overcome COVID. We've managed to actually, rally our troops around and so on and so forth. So at a very professional level, from a business perspective, the first quarter was really bad. March, we ended brilliantly, because it was the last 1 week of March and we were more or less on track in terms of our numbers. All our processes were digital. So we didn't face many of the issues that some of our competitors did of checks getting stuck in office or application forms being stuck in office when the lockdown was announced. So we did not have too much of a problem in terms of closing the year. We ended on a high with a 25. When it came to the first quarter, I think we were all dealing with this whole sense of shaving with the left hand, as I call it. We didn't know how to do sales without having a customer sitting in front of you. We didn't know how to generate leads without walking into a bank branch. And while as an organization, we did everything possible to ensure that there was capacity for 100% of our teams to work from home. So one of our biggest focus areas was everybody in the organization should be able to work from home. And the moment we could get that done, I think everything else fell into place, from then training them on how to use those skill sets, work with them. So AMJ was not a great quarter for us. Everybody was busy adapting. I think July, post the lockdown lifting and post a lot of other green zones, orange zones, red zones coming up, people getting more in control of being able to even get tested, if not anything else, understanding a little more about what COVID was, though we can really not say that we understand what COVID is. I think all of that, we are seeing green shoots. July has been a good month. August has also been a good YOY catch up, and so has September been. So professionally, we've seen that wave. But I think there's one huge aspect that most people do not talk about, which is, how are you feeling? How are you? Literally, genuinely, how are you? And I think that question of how are you has become so much more individual than it ever has in all of these years. How are you is always an individual question. But I think in these past 6 months, how are you has become a micro individual question per person, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. I think you bring in a point which I would have addressed at the end, is self-care for each person, whether you're as a leader of an organization or a leader of a home. I think how each one of us feels and how we look after ourselves in a holistic way, in terms of health, in terms of emotional well-being, in terms of our nutrition. I think how we feel is a combination of that. And there is an unsaid grief all of us have of not being able to do the things that we did before COVID. So yes, you're absolutely right. It may seem like a very innocuous, simple question, but by the way, how are you? How are you today? I know I could have asked that question instead of other things that I asked, but how are you feeling today?
No, I think you did start how are things, in a way, you did ask the right question, Dr. Batra, and how are things. And I'm just, I think, calling out something that most people don't, because when people say how are things, or even if you say how are you, everybody moves into whatever can be quantified. You will move into business, you will move into, term plans really are seeing a pull. We see an insurance a pull for the first time. I think we, instead of seeing a push product, insurance has become a nudge product. So I think people tend to talk about stuff that can be quantified. I think what people rarely talk about is stuff that can't be quantified.
Let's. I know we are here to talk about business, economy, and insurance, but as a leader, tell us what are the stuff that we don't talk about.
Yeah, I think stuff that we don't talk about is emotional well-being. I think stuff we don't talk about is what a leader is going through when they're making decisions. For instance, when we rolled out targets, okay, and we said, okay, these are targets. When we have reviews, and you're doing it from work from home, you can hear the background of a child crying sometimes. And everybody on the call pretends like that isn't happening.
Sure.
You're all focused. And if you do call it out, people get embarrassed. They hear an unprofessionalism, criticism, even when it is not intended. I think what we don't talk about is what we go through. So, for instance, when we made this decision that we will roll out targets, and we made this decision that it will
and you qualified that the sales process has changed from physical, suddenly you're thrown into uncharted territory where without a physical interface with the customer you have to do it, or with your channel partners you have to do it. So you did qualify that too, right at the start.
That's true. I did qualify the change in the process itself. But when we're talking about what is it that we don't talk about, we don't talk about these differences. We don't talk about the fact that what are the struggles you're facing while working from home? What change can I bring about? What difference can I make as a manager to ensure that you feel lesser pressure? Everybody in the team is not the same. There are people who have the privilege of having an own room which they can block the whole day. There are people who are sharing the room with someone else, right?
The children are home, spouses are home.
Exactly.
Male or female, both ways.
Exactly.
So you need at least 4 rooms if you want all of them to be engaged in whatever they want to be. The children have to log into their school, the wife or husband has to log into their work. So you're so right.
So yeah, and we don't talk about what a leader has gone through. For me, one of the fundamental things that got tested, and I remember, was we keep saying employee first. We keep saying we are all a family. All right. When I'm asking my employee to continue to do business, am I being employee first or am I being organization first?
Mm-hmm.
That's something we don't talk about as leaders.
There has to be a balance.
There has to be a
balance. Both are important because your livelihood standpoint, the organization has to do well to be able to look after the aspiration of the individual. But you are rightly said, you brought compassion up front. You bring caring up front. You bring a simple conversation where you talk about what he or she is going through. I mean, just talking about it can kind of make them feel better. So you're so right about that. Let me shift gears and ask you, when do you see the Indian economy coming back in full bloom? What is the prognosis of the economy right now?
So we were on I'm part of the National Council for CII, and we had a CII National Council meet yesterday. And there was a snap poll of all CEOs on the state of economy that we're looking at. And the snap poll revealed, and also an economist presentation had to say that it would be at least 12 to 18 months before we saw the economy coming back to pre-COVID. So we are expecting October 21, really, is when we expect the economy to be back on tracks and deliver the way they were delivering pre-COVID days. We are seeing green shoots. You do see an on and off gem. For instance, August of 2020 in automobiles has actually been better than August 19. But what people fail to understand, that August 19 was one of the lowest months in 4 years. So statistics at a very high level can be misleading when you're trying to look at how deep the economy is. So I guess when we have all the data put together and you look at the relevant sub datas along with it to kind of eliminate any base effect, we are seeing the economy probably just be on par on a YY growth for end of this year, and probably increase next year. From a GDP perspective, I think the expectation is anywhere between a -5 to -10. I think the optimistic scenario is a flat, which is 0% GDP growth. But for GDP to come back and go back to a 5.5 or a 7.5 kind of a number, I think that will be end of FY22. And we'll probably see green shoots only mid of FY22.
And again, just to add to that, it also depends on the sector, right? There's a new term called the K-shaped recovery, which means certain sectors will see a upward movement and certain sectors at the same time will see a downward movement.
Yeah.
Now let me get into insurance. It is a time when people are very conscious of their health of their families, health of their organizations. So insurance should have seen much more increase and much more closures. However, that hasn't happened. In fact, last 6 months overall, the insurance sector has also degrown. Right? So tell us, how are you placed within this scenario? How do you see the next 6 to 12 months? I don't want to ask you beyond that, because I know beyond that it will be very, very good. My view is in 12 to 18 months, the economy should start picking up very well. And in 24 to 36 months, we should be at a higher level than we are today, or at our best point. So, but tell us about the next 6 to 12 months for the insurance sector. How is your organization placed? What are the new products? For example, people have come up with a COVID insurance. People have come up with a pet insurance. Of course, health insurance was always very important, but the value of health insurance has been been validated in these times. So give us a sense of where is the insurance sector heading?
So I think, this is a perfect time for us to start realizing why insurance is so different from manufacturing and retail and FMCG. When you look at sectors that are growing, so if you look at the retail which is growing, or you look at e-commerce that is growing, it's the growth of e-commerce and the growth of retail has got absolutely no offside pull to it. Similarly, the degrowth of hospitality or the degrowth of tourism. These are very unidimensional growth or degrowth. Now, when you come to insurance, and especially life insurance and health insurance, these are all industries when, as they grow, there is also a big factor that needs to be looked at when there is a pull of something called anti-selection, right? So the more there is a customer pull, you need to make sure that that customer pull is not happening by people who are anti-selecting. As in, a simple explanation we have is you don't insure a house on fire. Okay, so similarly, you can't insure somebody for COVID when they're already diagnosed with COVID and in hospital. So you can't insure a person who is on his deathbed for life insurance. So the challenge in insurance is to make sure that people are buying it because they may need it in future and not because they need it now. Unlike any other industry, where the demand and the supply can be almost immediate. I want a car now, so I go buy a car now. Oh, I'm hospitalized, I need an insurance now. No, you can't go buy an insurance now. So the moment of truth is really not the same as the moment of purchase. And I think that is a very critical difference as to why the growth of insurance industry cannot be compared as easily as growth of other sectors can, because the moment of purchase and moment of truth are not at the same time. They happen at different periods of time. Insurance challenges that we've had, one is to make sure that we don't have anti-selection. The other big challenge that we're all facing is inadequacy of data. Insurance industry is a data junkie. All of their models, when you look at it from an actual pricing model or any other model, they all come from data, from a historical, empirical evidence of how it is, trend, stochastic modeling, future forecasting. These are all, very inherent, very core elements of pricing. And we don't have that enough. People say 6 months is enough. 6 months is not enough, because now you're having the next set of COVID carriers who don't have symptoms and who are infecting people. And you don't know. You don't know what's happening. You don't know who is a COVID patient, who is not. How is COVID going to react to certain people? How is it not going to react to certain people? So data has been a big challenge. That's the second point in terms of pricing and offering products which may have, date of purchase and date moment of truth being closer. The third big point is that the pull that is happening is for a lot of life policies and health policies. Whereas typically, when you look at an industry growth, you look at industry growth in terms of APE or premium. The premium for a pure life insurance policy or term policy is far lower than the premium for a unit-linked insurance policy or for a long-term savings policy, which we call a par or a non-par policy. And therefore, if you look at it from a sum insured, if you just look at a sum insured perspective and you see just IndiaFirst Life's growth from last year to this year, you will see a growth of almost 350% in sum insured. But you don't see a growth in terms of premium, because the premium for a pure term policy is far lower than a premium which includes long-term. So I think the growth data also again needs to go into the second level and third level of data to see how the growth is getting reflected in the insurance industry.
Thank you so much. And going forward, the next 6 months, do you think more people will buy health insurance? They'll buy more life insurance? Do you see that happening, or we cannot say it from current data, because the last 6 months data, both in terms of queries and in terms of closure, doesn't show an upswing, right? For most players. So what's your sense moving forward in these two categories of health and life?
So I think it will depend on whether the behavior change that we're seeing currently is here to stay or not.
So
I definitely
consumers'
know
consciousness and approach towards insurance. Is that the behavior change?
That's right. You look at you can word it as consumers' consciousness towards insurance. I will also word it as consumers' management of risk. Their cognizance of what risk is, their cognizance of insurance as a risk mitigation tool. Insurance has never really been looked at as a risk mitigation tool. Insurance has always been something you buy because you're getting an 80D relief, or you're getting an 80C relief, or you're getting tax-free returns. Now, insurance purely for the sake of insurance, because it can be a huge risk mitigation factor, I think is something that has been less understood. I think that's probably something that's become more understood now with this pandemic coming in with uncertainty, because it's only at the times of uncertainty that people really, really understand what managing uncertainty is all about. And then they appreciate insurance as the tool to manage uncertainty. Today, I know there is a heightened risk awareness. Today, I know that there is heightened uncertainty, and therefore people are looking at buying insurance. Whether this pandemic results in a complete change in that behavior where people realize that it is unpredictable, we need to have a certain amount of security and we need to ring fence and therefore use insurance as a tool and start looking at payment of insurance premiums as a necessity, a must have and not a good to have. I think if that change has happened today, if that change can stay permanently and keep increasing, then I think that you will see a more long-lasting impact on insurance.
It may not be the perfect example, just to support what you said. When it comes to a car, we definitely insure the car against accidents, right? Because we know that road accidents happen. But when it comes, and so we don't see it as an expense. It's an integral cost built into the total cost of ownership of the vehicle, so to say. So we have to rightly say the risk management for any customer and individual is priceless, so to say.
Yeah.
You got to build it into your way of living, into your yearly expenditure that goes into making sure that your life's risks in every aspect is mitigated. So you're so right in the way you put it. Coming to business and economy, the big elephant in the room is demand. And demand is directly linked to jobs. If you look at any study, whether from an economist or a non-economist, one thing they agree on is that demand is a direct proportion of the jobs in the economy, the money they have in their hand. So when do you see demand of, I know IPL is happening, so certain categories are seeing surge. I know Diwali is around the corner, it's about 44 days away. So there will be demand in the festive season, whether it's a Durga Puja in Bengal. So tell us, when do you see the consumer demand overall coming up?
I think you'll have to look at it as a factor of GDP growth, right? I mean, we don't have any direct studies. There is a recent Reserve Bank of India study which is on the consumer confidence survey. And when you look at a consumer confidence survey of the Reserve Bank of India, it appears that they're not going to get back. Confidence in spending is not going to happen until probably the end of the year. So if you have to rely on that survey, it seems that there will not be any demand for luxury items, that most of the demand will come for household items. Most of the demand will probably come for just the regular routine. There was a anecdotal information I had heard, which I wanted to actually validate, which perhaps we should actually validate later on, is a increase for jewelry. That there has been an increase in demand for jewelry. And while a lot of increase in demand is being put down to deferred sales, saying it was pent-up demand from April, I don't think jewelry really is going to be a pent-up demand. Somewhere I think it is again a reflection of the security that each person wants to go in for, and they move into something which is more safe and secure.
Ornamental value, and it is also an asset class which gives security. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. So I don't see consumer demand really increasing or even being on par with last year for the current year. I think most Indians are conservative by nature. I know the new generation is not, and I know the new generation lives more for the moment than maybe people who are in post 40s. So you may see an increase in stuff that the new generation prefers, but which is more in terms of digital and electronics. So I don't see major demand in terms of your in terms of your other consumer goods.
Okay. Now also there is a credit issue. We may have money outstanding, but we don't know the position of that SME. So I'm not talking on necessarily your partners, your channel partners. In a lot of industries, the financial health of the distributor, the channel partner, has come under severe pressure. So while they're outstanding, let's take a mall, the leading mall in Delhi. I mean, it may have 400 occupiers, but we don't know the health of the smaller occupiers. So we may have rental as accruing on our balance sheet, but we don't know some of those will even open up again. So just to use it, how do we make sure that we get the credit information right and it is accurate? Because there's so much uncertainty.
True. There is uncertainty, and I think the SMEs and the MSMEs have really been the worst impacted, right, Annurag? I mean, it's these are people who rely on credit and who rely on a supply of money on the basis of sales that are happening almost on a live basis. So where that has been stopped and they've not gotten it back, I think that's going to be a disaster which will need to be recovered. You do, however, see a lot of measures being implemented. And so I think those SMEs and MSMEs which have had a track record of better performance, I think they are the ones who are continuing to get capital for them to be able to come back and stand on their feet. So I think this is where your track record and your goodwill is going to really hold you in good stead. And yeah, so or it will have to be back to entrepreneurs trying to do something different from what they used to do before. The blow is in that K-shape that you were speaking about. So you have some SMEs and SMEs who will fall into the K of the upward, and there will be some who will go into the downward. If you look at a sector at a very large level, and if you look at it from an agriculture sector, is agriculture in the K curve going upwards? And the answer is yes. And if agriculture constitutes almost 50-60% of our economy, or 30% of it, then I think that will work. Services industry is going in the upward. E-commerce is in the upward trend. Industry, infrastructure, all of that should have been in the downward trend. But you also see now a lot of developments of infrastructure. There's a lot more spend happening on roads and urban development and rural development. So I believe the government is making a lot of investments to make sure that infrastructure grows, and therefore that primary underlying foundation for the growth of an economy will be strengthened. Do I see any immediate results of it this December? No. And which is why I think the economic forecast that we're discussing, that by next October, we'll probably be seeing a lot more growth, is something that I would also tend to agree with.
Thank you so much. You're not an astrologer, you're not a futurist, and I'm on the same category. But if you had to look at the insurance sector 3 to 5 years from now, what do you see changing, and how do you see the industry doing 3 to 5 years? I asked you about immediate short term, which is at best we can see, possibly in some sectors we can't even say we can see what will happen 30 days from now. But tell us, because there's a big variable of when the COVID goes away, when the vaccine is ready. So every question has to be answered from when the vaccine has to be ready. So let's say by mid-2021, the vaccine is being administered, things are better. In the next 2 to 3 years, where do you see the insurance industry going? In terms of numbers, in terms of growth, in terms of trends?
Do I have the option to answer the question to see where do you want the insurance industry to be going?
Absolutely.
So I think I know where I would like to see the insurance industry growing is I would like to see a mandatory life insurance policy for pure term to the extent of your insurable value in the hands of every Indian. And I think, every Indian should be having that term policy as a base. I think there's certain amount of development of fixed income plans which are more market linked. So rather than having these standard plans which today depend on a rate of interest that the insurance industry or the actuaries in the insurance industry calculate to be a rate that will be what the investment department can earn over the next 20 years. I think we could have an interest rate which is more dynamic, which can be more linked to a fixed government security or any other standard benchmark. This whole participating and non-participating products, the stigma of it goes away, because they're actually really good products for people who don't want to have a very high exposure to market link, people who want more security. It's better than buying jewelry. And but that whole stigma goes away because there is increased transparency, there is more understanding, there is more awareness of what does cost of capital and cost of guarantee mean to insurance companies. I would like to see a development of annuity products. I think annuity is going to be the future. People don't know it yet. People don't realize it yet. But I think development of annuity is going to be something very, very keen. Have to see a change in product regulations which actually allow for an insurance policy to be purchased where you can pay as you go. As in, today a very typical insurance policy, if you want to save for your retirement, you have a plan which mandates that you have to pay for the either single premium or the next 5 years or 10 years or 15 years or whatever period of time. And then you don't have a choice to lapse. If you lapse it, like you don't pay your next year premium, then you can reinstate that policy in 2 years' time. But after a period of time, the policy lapses. And I really find that to be a big impediment in these uncertain scenarios. When you look at more than 60% of the population of the country really not having a salaried job, expecting people to sign up for a guaranteed premium for the next foreseeable period of time, I think is a big impediment for development of insurance. So if we'll be in a position where we can actually develop plans where you pay premiums as and when you have the money, and the plan kind of adjusts itself and it's versatile enough to adjust itself to be able to provide for the individual the amount that he or she needed for the child's education or retirement or any other long-term need. I think that will be a brilliant outcome.
Thank you so much. I totally concur with you as a consumer. I can tell you that me and my wife were discussing a policy. We signed up about 3 months back, and not knowing that we actually signed up in March. We were trying to meet March 31st. And then, now it has come up for payment, but it's a very, since we chose LIC, which is good in a way, it's very structured. It's very non-flexible, if I may say. So you're absolutely right. For any levels of premium, whether small or large, flexibility and innovation in the product will help consumers sign up more and mitigate the risk better. I want to bring in the element of innovation. You just mentioned about how the policy needs to be kind of factoring in the situation of consumers where they may not have continuity of income and they may have crests and troughs, right? So the policy needs to give them flexibility to be able to pay. Tell us, what are the innovation or innovations that can happen in the insurance sector? I know it's one of the most regulated sector. IRDA has very stringent rules, and rightly so, with the right intent. But we also need to contextualize them. We need to contemporarize them. I mean, we are in an unusual situation. We have to look at some things in a very different way. Over the last few years, IRDA mandated a certain decrease in the commissions for insurance agents, standardization. So tell us, what are the other things that can be done by the players and by the insurance regulator to kind of unlock the insurance economy?
I think I'll start with complimenting IRDA for the kind of sandbox regulations that they brought in. If you look at it from an intent of the regulator, I think the intent of the regulator has been to see how we can bring in more and more innovation into the product development. I believe very firmly that there are some fundamental assumptions that are made in the construct of an insurance policy, which is what limits innovation. And some of the fundamental assumptions that are made in the construct of the policy are in terms of the fact that we will need to give a high upfront commission. We will need to have regular premium payment. We have to work on a par kind of a structure where you work backwards from an amount of money that you want to pay over the next 15-20 years. And your protection has to be priced on the basis of a similar generic pool. Big assumption: we cannot repudiate fraudulent claims. We cannot repudiate somebody's fraud after 3 years. It's not an assumption; it's a regulation. Actually, correct my understanding. I think if we start just moving all these aside and just approach it with a completely clean slate and say, what is it that the customer wants today? If you look at a millennial today, he's not coming from a space of scarcity. He or she is not coming from the place where you and I came from, where we had to start working as soon as we could. They're coming from a far more relaxed space. So what is it that they're looking for? What kind of protection are they looking for? They are looking for some kind of a protection for the unforeseen, which will not enable them to pursue their dreams. I think we have very clear-cut segments today of people, and the products need to get tailored to those clear-cut segments. Will that mean changing fundamental assumptions? Yes. To go back to the reference I made in my previous answer to your question, having a product which has premium holidays, which has flexibilities, and all of those is something that will attract a new age customer. Another big development that I believe will help in innovation is our ability to interlink all of society. Can I work with, say, a school, of where my customer's child is going, to then tell that customer that you pay me X amount of premium, all right? And if something were to happen to you, we won't place the burden of managing the school fees of that child on your surviving family member, but we will work with that school to make sure that that child gets his tuition fees paid for till his 10th or 12th or whatever. Can we work with that ecosystem where then payments are made to the respective organizations so that the objective of the insurance is met without it becoming a liability for the individual? Because at the end of the day, Dr. Batra, when you look at it from insurance, nobody really wants money for the sake of money. What are you going to do? We're not Midas, right? You're not just going to sit with all that gold in your house or all that money in your house. All of us need money for fulfillment of certain requirements. It could be necessities, it could be luxuries, but we all need money to fulfill certain aspirations. What if those aspirations could actually be married into insurance policies so that those aspirations are met, and you don't have to worry about price change? Will I be able to afford that retirement home when I actually retire? I'm saving 10 lakhs per month. Is that going to be enough? Can we really create that ecosystem? And can we really create products to serve that ecosystem? I think that would be innovation at its best.
Thank you so much for explaining the context and detailing of where all it could be applied to be able to create unique new products and more acceptance of those products with all the stakeholders. I want to shift gears and ask you, you are, apart from being a CEO and leader of your organization, you're also an individual, you're also a human being. Tell us, for you, how leadership has changed over the last 6 months. Of course, most of the tenets of leadership are are timeless, like doing more listening, being compassionate, leading by example, honesty, commitment. They will always be applicable and true, and maybe more true as we go forward. But tell us, what has changed in you as a leader in the last 6-7 months?
I think what's changed for me as a leader is a very clear understanding of priorities and the need to prioritize constantly. Emotional empathy. I know it's a lot more. I would actually put it at a higher level than just about being emotional or about emotional resilience. I would actually say an emotional empathy, an ability to not just understand yourself, your drivers, your triggers, but also understand the impact of the environment on people around you, and understand that a lot of reactions that are happening are really not happening in this situation. Earlier, if you're in a meeting with 5 people and people reacted in that meeting, you could more or less say that the reaction was because of what was happening in the meeting. I think in these 6 months, what I've realized is a lot of reactions that are happening in that meeting have got nothing to do with what's happening in that meeting, but it's got a lot to do with what's happening to that person outside of this meeting in his or her own environment. So being able to bring in that context into meetings and being able to filter communication, I think has called for a huge amount of emotional resilience. And I think I've been challenged by it. I have been challenged by the amount of self-confidence, the amount of willpower that you need to bring in, and to just stay motivated and keep people motivated.
Thank you so much. My last question to you. If you had to make 3 predictions for the future, which include the future of life, future of work, future of workplaces, future of economy, what would those 3 predictions be?
The future of life. I think life as we knew it to be this, societal body is going to change. I think people are going to become more and more individualistic, and they're not going to be
individualistic in the sense that they would go more within.
Yeah.
That's what you mean, right?
Yeah. So it should always be a group of 5 people. I think this is and it makes a team. I somehow feel the individuals of each of them is going to be strongly developed. People are going to develop more as an individual, becoming more self-reliant, because I think this pandemic has taught us how important it is for us to be self-reliant, both emotionally and physically. I think that is more or less here to stay. From a work perspective, I think the meaning of work is going to get more significant. I know that a lot of people who have gone into, why are we working? What am I doing? At the end of the day, I could die tomorrow, and what am I chasing? So I think this whole meaning of work was always relevant, but I think meaning of work is going to get more enhanced and more crystallized and become more sharp as to why am I working is going to become a more sharply defined.
Purpose has become very important.
The purpose is going to be even more important and more sharply defined than before. Sorry, you said life, work, workplace. Workplaces, that's a tough one actually, because you see the divide so clearly. On one hand, I'm like, I wish I could get more people back into the office, because it's so much more easier to motivate people when they're in the office, because they're all then working on the same level, they're all in the same benchmark. So it's easy to motivate people when they're at the same place. Today, when you're trying to motivate people or rally people together, each one is on a different plane. So trying to get your team together to rally them and motivate them when they're on different planes is a challenge. So one part of me wants everybody back in office. There's another part of me which is like, why don't we give an option? Maybe this. I know that people who've been so happy not to travel 3 hours. I know that the pandemic has brought about a different problem in not having a social life. But if you could have a social life, as an individual, would you be happy to work from home? Would that be a choice that you would want to take? And I do think there'll be a lot of people who will want to take that choice. So that could also be a win-win for the organization. So I do believe that some part of work will move permanently to work from home and probably enable organizations to think differently. That's from a workplace. And I forgot the fourth impact. You asked for four. You said life, work, working place,
business,
the economy. The economy, e-commerce, digital, I think has really shown the way. Any organization which was prepared to be digitally savvy has really risen to the top. You clearly see retail franchises, right? And you see retail franchises, people who were ready and equipped to move just managed to jump on the curve, and they have been able to do a brilliant job of it. And people who were not prepared retail in a digital manner, in a logistic manner, I think they are the ones who had to struggle. So there will be more investment in digital. There will be more investment in e-tailing. I think we will all move far more into digital processes and the physical. So we will definitely move strongly towards the phygital and the digital than we are today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Vishakha, for talking to us. It's been a pleasure. For all our viewers, if you missed the chat, you can view it on the BW YouTube page or the businessworld.in. You can read the transcript. Or if you missed both, then you can read in the next issue of BW Business World. We've enjoyed talking to you, Ms. Vishakha. We wish you luck, and I hope the vision you have for your industry and your company comes true. And clearly, insurance for an individual is no longer a choice. It should be a necessity, in my view. And I'd like to close on that. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed the conversation. God bless you. I think we made up for the late start by the quality of the inputs that you've given. And I'm grateful to you for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure to be on the show. Thank you so much, Dr. Batra.
Thank you so much.